At 1:23 a.m. on April 26, 1986, a sudden and immense power surge occurred within the reactor of Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The increase in steam pressure from the rapidly boiling coolant led to a steam explosion, causing the reactor's 1,000-ton cover to be blown off. The explosion released a massive amount of radioactive gases, aerosols, and particles into the atmosphere. It was the largest nuclear accident in human history, emitted 400 times more radiations than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Welcome to this exploration of one of the most significant nuclear disasters in history, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. The Chernobyl power station was situated at the settlement of Pripyat, 10 miles northwest of the city of Chernobyl and 65 miles north of Kyiv, Ukraine. It was one of the first nuclear power plants built in the Soviet Union and played a crucial role in the country's nuclear energy program. Construction of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant began in the late 1970s, and it was commissioned in the mid-1980s. The plant was designed to house 4 RBMK-type reactors, a type of graphite-moderated reactor known for its high power output and low construction cost. The RBMK reactors were widely used in the Soviet Union for their versatility and ability to produce weapons-grade plutonium. The primary purpose of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, like other nuclear power plants, was to generate electricity. It was intended to provide a significant portion of the energy needs for Ukraine and contribute to the Soviet Union's energy production goals. The plant was also seen as a symbol of Soviet technological prowess and progress. The location of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was chosen due to various factors. First, it was situated near the city of Kyiv, which is one of the largest cities in the Soviet Union, and the demand for electricity in the region was high. Second, the proximity to the Dnieper River provided a water source for cooling the reactors, a crucial requirement for nuclear power plants. Finally, the area had a relatively low population density, making it suitable for the construction of a large-scale industrial facility. In the late hours of April 25, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant's reactor Unit 4 was scheduled to undergo a safety test, a routine procedure aimed at assessing the reactor's ability to maintain cooling during a shutdown scenario and assess the effectiveness of the emergency systems. During a power outage, the turbines would lose momentum and stop generating electricity, leading to the reliance on emergency diesel generators to power essential safety systems. The RBMK-1000 reactor, designed by the Soviet Union for its nuclear power program, had known design flaws, including a positive void coefficient, which meant that as steam bubbles formed in the cooling water, the reactor's reactivity increased. This flaw was not fully understood by the plant operators, and it would play a crucial role in the unfolding disaster. As part of the test preparations, the reactor's power output was gradually reduced to very low levels. However, instead of operating at the standard safety power level of 700 to 1000 megawatt, it was lowered to an extremely low level of about 30 megawatt for the test. This decision significantly increased the reactor's instability and heightened the risks during the experiment. To ensure a more pronounced response during the test, the operators decided to disable critical safety systems. Specifically, they deactivated automatic shutdown mechanisms and removed a significant number of control rods from the core. This left the reactor with fewer regulatory mechanisms to control its power output and further reduced its safety margins. As the safety test commenced, the reactor's power output continued to drop to critically low levels. The operators, attempting to stabilize the reactor, began inserting control rods back into the core. However, the control rods had graphite tips, and when they were inserted into the reactor, they initially displaced water, causing a temporary spike in reactivity instead of reducing it. The combination of low reactor power, the insertion of graphite tip control rods, and the disabling of safety systems created an increasingly precarious situation inside the reactor core. At 1:23 a.m. on April 26, 1986, a sudden and immense power surge occurred within the reactor. The increase in steam pressure from the rapidly boiling coolant led to a steam explosion, causing the reactor's 1,000-ton cover to be blown off. The explosion released a massive amount of radioactive gases, aerosols, and particles into the atmosphere. The intense radiation levels near the reactor made firefighting and containment efforts extremely challenging. Nonetheless, the plant workers and firefighters, unaware of the gravity of the situation, courageously attempted to extinguish the fires and control the disaster. Due to the high levels of radiation exposure, many of these responders suffered from acute radiation sickness, experiencing symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, and severe fatigue. Despite their brave efforts, some succumbed to their injuries in the days following the incident. The radioactive plume from the explosion spread across Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, and other parts of Europe, contaminating vast areas with isotopes such as iodine-131, cesium-137, and strontium-90. The immediate surrounding area, including the city of Pripyat, was heavily contaminated. The residents of Pripyat, with a population of approximately 50,000, were urgently evacuated in the immediate aftermath of the explosion. The evacuation was initially planned for a short period, but the high levels of radioactive contamination rendered the area uninhabitable for decades to come. In response to the disaster, a large exclusion zone was established around the Chernobyl power plant, encompassing an area of approximately 2,600 square kilometers. This zone remains highly restricted and is closely monitored due to the persistently high levels of radiation. Only limited access is granted for scientific research, monitoring, and essential personnel. The immediate impact on human health was devastating. Many tragically lost their lives in the days and weeks following the disaster. The nearby city of Pripyat, home to plant workers and their families, had to be evacuated, displacing thousands of people. In the long term, the effects on human health were even more far-reaching. The radiation exposure led to an increase in cancer cases, particularly thyroid cancer, among those exposed. It resulted in widespread radioactive contamination of soil, water, and vegetation, and negative impacts on wildlife health. Despite human evacuation, the exclusion zone has become an accidental wildlife reserve, but the slow recovery and restoration of the ecosystem are ongoing due to persistent radioactive contamination. The sarcophagus was the first containment structure built immediately after the disaster. It was an emergency measure to cover and seal the reactor fort to prevent further releases of radioactive materials into the environment. The sarcophagus was a large concrete and steel structure that was hastily constructed in the months following the explosion. Over time, it deteriorated, and concerns arose about its ability to contain the radioactive materials inside the reactor. To address these concerns, an international project was initiated to build a more advanced and durable containment structure known as the new safe confinement. The NSC is a massive arch-shaped structure made of steel and concrete designed to enclose the entire Chernobyl reactor building. The construction of the NSC began in 2010 and was completed in November 2016. The arch was built a short distance away from the damaged reactor and then slowly slid into place over it. This process allowed for minimal exposure to radiation for the construction workers. The new safe confinement is expected to contain the radioactive remains of Reactor 4 for at least 100 years. This long-term solution allows time for further technological advancements and ensures that the radioactive materials are effectively contained until they become less hazardous. The Chernobyl disaster had a profound impact on nuclear safety worldwide. It exposed the vulnerabilities of RBMK reactors and brought attention to the need for stricter safety regulations and better emergency preparedness. The disaster prompted a re-evaluation of nuclear power policies and regulations, leading to significant changes in safety protocols, reactor design, and emergency response procedures. The international community came together to share knowledge and resources to prevent future nuclear catastrophes.